Something is happening right now that's never happened before. For the very first time in history, we're seeing a whole generation of people who were diagnosed with autism as kids, and they're now reaching their senior years. This is completely new territory, and it's making us ask some really big, important questions about what it means to grow old on the spectrum.
So, what does this actually mean? I mean, for real people and for all of us as a society. We're so used to talking about autism in the context of kids and schools, right? But now we have to face a whole new set of realities about aging, health, and just belonging. So, let's dive into what the research and, more importantly, personal stories are telling us.
To really get what's at stake here, I want to start with a story. Imagine you're at a conference, you've just given a presentation, you're an expert in your field, and then someone introduces you by saying, "This is Cause, an autistic adult." The person who shared the story said they were just mortified. They felt like a specimen on display. That one moment, that feeling of being othered, it's a window into the kind of social exclusion that can shadow an entire life. And that deep, painful feeling of exclusion? Well, it has a name, and the data behind it is pretty sobering. We're talking about loneliness. The research shows there's a quiet but really serious mental health crisis happening in this aging community.
The thing is, no matter which study you look at, the results are shockingly consistent. They all point to the same troubling pattern. When you compare autistic seniors to their non-autistic peers, their outcomes are significantly worse across the board. We're talking mental health, physical health, social connections, and just overall quality of life.
I want you to just look at this number for a second. 20%.
That's how many older autistic adults are considered socially isolated. 1 in 5. That is a huge number, and it tells us this isn't just about a few individuals. It's a much bigger, systemic issue. And this really puts it into perspective. Look at that comparison. 20% for autistic adults versus just 4% for non-autistic adults. The gap is massive. We're talking about a 5 times greater likelihood of being cut off from social connection. It's just undeniable.
And here is why this matters so much. This isn't just about feeling sad or left out. As this research makes crystal clear, loneliness is a direct pipeline to poor mental health. It's directly linked to higher stress, and that creates this awful cycle that's just incredibly hard to escape. So, this leads to a pretty fundamental question. Where does this problem really come from? Is it something inside the autistic person, or is it happening in the gap between people? This really challenges some old ideas about empathy.
For decades, the default assumption was that social challenges were just an inherent part of being autistic, a deficit. But what if that's a complete misdiagnosis of the problem? What if we've been looking at this all wrong? Well, there's this really groundbreaking theory called the double empathy problem that totally flips the script. It says that these communication struggles aren't a one-way street. It's actually a mutual misunderstanding. Think of it as a breakdown in empathy happening on both sides when different types of brains try to connect. It's not a deficit, it's a mismatch. So what happens when you live your whole life with this empathy gap? Well, a lot of autistic people feel like they have to constantly perform. They develop this skill called adaptive morphing, or masking. It's this exhausting, lifelong effort to hide their natural traits and just try to copy non-autistic social behavior to survive. And the stakes here, they couldn't be higher. This isn't just about trying to fit in at a party. As this quote says, it's like being a chameleon. It's a survival strategy. People's mental, emotional, even their financial security literally depends on being able to pull off this performance. Okay, so if the problem isn't a deficit but a difference, what does that difference actually look like? This brings us to a really powerful way of reframing everything, the idea of monotropism. Here's the big idea. What if the very thing that can make typical social situations so hard, this different way of paying attention, is actually a hidden strength? What if it's the real key to finding genuine, deep connection?
It's called monotropism. It's a theory that basically describes the autistic mind as having this super focused, single-channel attention system. So instead of spreading attention thinly over a bunch of different things, it goes deep, diving into one interest at a time. It's like having an attention tunnel.
And this is the perfect way to picture it. Non-autistic, or polytropic, attention is like a floodlight. It spreads out, covers a wide area, which is great for multitasking and picking up on all those little social cues in a room. But monotropic attention is like a spotlight. It's intense, it's deep, and it focuses on one thing with incredible clarity.
One isn't better than the other. They're just different ways of seeing the world.
And this different wiring for attention creates a completely different way to connect with people. It's one that isn't built on small talk, but on real, shared passion. See, when autistic people connect with each other, or really with anyone who shares their passion, something really cool happens. The social rules just kind of change. Small talk goes out the window, and you get right to the good stuff. The conversation is direct, it's honest, and it's all about that shared interest. And that is a recipe for building some incredibly deep and authentic bonds. And this right here is the key to well-being. This quote from researcher One Lawson just says it all. When we work with the monotropic brain, instead of trying to fight it, we're affirming who that person is. We're boosting their self-esteem and opening the door to a future where they can actually thrive, not just survive.
So all of this really forces us to take a step back and ask, what does a good life for an aging autistic person even look like? We might need to redefine it.
And this is really the heart of it. Maybe the solution to this epidemic of loneliness isn't more training to fix a person's social skills. Maybe the answer is to create environments, clubs, communities, social groups, where their natural way of connecting through those deep shared interests is the norm, not the exception. And that leaves us with one last question to think about for this first generation of aging autistic adults, and really for all of us. What if the goal was never to change ourselves to fit into the world, but to change the world so that we can finally find the places where we truly belong?